So hello everyone and welcome back to this week's Substack Live with the Sustainable Media Center. I'm Emma Lemke and I am so glad today to be joined by our Executive Director, Steve, and our special guest, Nicki Petrossi, the powerhouse behind Scrolling to Death and that movement and a leading voice in the Parents in Action, a community helping families, rethink digital habits and reclaim intentional living. So today's focus is one that I think really hits home for a lot of the people within our network and within our community, which is how parents can kind of take action to build a healthier digital world for themselves and for their children. So I just kind of want to dive straight into this. So Nicki, I want to look at your work with Scrolling to Death. Your site and your campaign, they've become this rallying point for parents and for teens and educators who are really fed up and done feeling powerless in the face of endless scrolling. Could you kind of walk us through and talk us to us about, what inspired the creation of this movement? What kinds of actions or community responses you've seen thus far since launching? And then maybe, if you have time, what's one story that's kind of stuck with you about this work thus far?
Sure. So, and you're right that parents, my audience is mostly parents, so I'm going to refer to, but it's like everyone that's worried about this. But parents are fed up and they want to do something. And, back in 2023, it was for me more of like, something's wrong here. Oh, wait, like if kids spend 3 or more hours a day on social media, that doubles their risk of anxiety and depression. Wait, kids are dying from things that happen on social media. Wait, the Surgeon General put out this warning. And then, a little bit later, Jonathan Haidt's book hits. And I'm like, there's like an educational phase that needs to happen here for parents. Like we're all letting our kids have access to these things that feel exciting and new, and we don't understand the harms generally. And so for, I think the first year and a half, I was like, okay, let's like get educated. Let's make sure all parents know this information. And then apply it however we want. Like we can make whatever decisions that we feel are safe and have conversations that we feel need to be had with our kids. And over time, I realized like, okay, enough with the problems. We need solutions. And then I think there was a time there with like trying to get COSA passed and like, can we do this legislatively? And it was tough, what happened there. And so, we're making progress there, I think, on the state level, but federally is difficult. And so it's like, okay, do we have to take this into our own hands? And not just parents, a lot of youth advocacy groups have really been taking the lead too. And I think we're all realizing if we all work together and bring our voices in one line of movement and really work together, we can make a big difference. And so I think where I've been at lately is how can we get all parents on the same page, pushing on the same campaigns so that we can make a bigger impact, really to force these companies to make changes through like public campaigns and shaming them, like really pointing out these choices that they're making are for profit that put kids in harm's way. Like it's very obvious. All they need to do is this other, like point out what they could do to protect children, so actually just this week, we launched the Heat is On, which is like a new investigative miniseries that's all about activating parents. And that's a partnership with the Heat Initiative.
I was actually just about to ask you about that. So talk
Yeah.
us a little bit more about that initiative and about you had mentioned the importance of collaboration in this space, specifically intergenerationally.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's so interesting. I started attending some events with Heat Initiative maybe 6 months ago, and I saw what they were doing, and they're like protesting in front of Apple and Meta and, holding up big signs and getting in people's faces and actually letting Tim Cook see them at, the launch of the iPhone 17 was the last one we did. And as I started to talk to friends about it, they're like, oh, protests are just like people yelling, like, what does that actually do? And so through lots of conversations with Heat Initiative, and their team is so great, but specifically Sarah Gardner, the CEO and founder, we talked about how this type of pressure can actually change history. And this is like a bipartisan issue affecting every single family in the country and the world. So we can really gather all parents to be brave enough to do some of these bold actions. And so I saw the effectiveness of those campaigns. And, I think that intergenerationally, like I brought my 9, almost 10-year-old to the last New York protest. And she was, afterwards, she's like, I want to do that again. Like, when can we do that again? And she's really taking this whole like safety conversation into her daily life with her friends. And so it's something that affects all of us. And I, through this project, hope to inspire parents to like be brave and be willing to speak up for our kids, because we can make safer choices in our home, but like it has to be society wide. And so we've gotten a lot, like hundreds of parents signing up for this community so far, and it's been really great.
My last major question specifically about the new initiative that you have with the Heat Initiative. Why
Yeah.
did you find that this was the right moment? Because I know that you've known about it
Mm,
for 6 months and you've been in the space for longer.
hmm.
Um, but I even being in the space for about 5 years, I know how quickly things have changed over the past
Yeah.
year. Tell me why right now was when you wanted this to launch.
Well, parents told me this is what they needed. Like, parents kept messaging me, okay, like I get it. I'm going to delay access to social media and smartphones, but I want to do more. What more can I do now? And there are so many, like within our internal groups, like we know of lots of petitions to sign, and there's templates of letters we can send to lawmakers, but it doesn't seem to seep out into the public community. So that's what I wanted to make available to just everyday parents that are busy but want to do something more. And I mean, there's even parents who've reached out like, I'm in PR, or I'm a writer, I'll work for free. Like, tell me how to help this movement. And so there's just a need for something else to do. And there's a lot of parents with like a skill set too that could help. And we all want the same thing, like a safer experience for our kids across the board.
Yeah, and Steve, I kind of want to pull you into this as both a supporter of the work and as a parent. What has your response and reaction been? And then also, do you think parents largely know what's happening? Or do you think that these initiatives are necessary to kind of get parents past the line of understanding the perils of the digital age to this extent?
So, first of all, I think it's worth saying out loud that for Nikki and I, like when we were exposed to social media, when we were that age, if we were at all, we weren't, and it was harmless. And I remember in the case of my older son, he had a computer, but you could see what was on the screen. You'd go into his room and it would be on the screen. Phones changed that because all of a sudden the proximity became this. And you didn't really want to, like, you didn't want to lean over their shoulder to look, and they didn't want you to lean. And so all of a sudden, as a parent, I remember very, very viscerally being shut out and realizing that my boys had a relationship to a digital world that was invisible to me. And and occasionally they would share, they'd say, "Hey, Dad, this is cool," or "Let me show you something." And I remember in the case of my older son, him saying to me, "Dad, I saw this cool thing online." And he showed me that it was Pepe the Frog. And I said, "Well, trying to be a cool dad," I said, there's some politics associated with Pepe the Frog. We should maybe
Mm.
talk about the complexity of that. And I just remember he looked at me and he said, "You just have no sense of humor."
Hmm.
And I was
Mm.
like, okay, that door is shut.
Mm.
And the decision that these platforms have made to shut parents out is not an accident.
Hmm.
And certainly Snap is maybe the largest, guilty of that, which is, as a parent, I mean, you kind of know what Instagram is doing, sort of ish, and it's kind of know what's going on TikTok, maybe, but Snap is just impenetrable, and I remember that
Hmm.
from the very earliest days. Um, and I understand why they think that's a good business decision, but it's a bad society decision.
Yeah.
And I would say this, I mean, I I don't want to use a stereotypical word and call Nikki brave because it's too simple, but like you're just, and I say this with a great big smile on my face, you're relentless. Like
Yeah.
I watch you every week, and every week I think, God, this woman, she's never tired. She's
Okay.
never over. I mean, she's never overwhelmed. She never shrugs her shoulders. She never gives
Huh.
up. Like you
Hmm.
should have a cape,
Wow.
like
Thank
like a
you.
superhero cape.
Thank you. Halloween's coming up. You might need to get a
Yeah,
costume.
we'll have a cape. Like in terms of how you got here,
Hmm.
like, were you a journalist? Were you an author? Were you
Oh, hmm.
is this been your career? Like, how did you end up like I remember the first time I met you and just thinking, like, she's such a pro. Like from the very
Interesting.
beginning, like you just had a sense of the complexity of the story and you humanized it and you
Mm.
did it like it was like you were born to do this. But did you do
Hmm.
it professionally before this?
So I had a company that actually managed social media for tech companies. It started off innocently enough. My parents had a restaurant and they realized they needed help with social media. They didn't want to do it. And so I'm like, I'll do it. And then that grew into me managing social media platforms for companies. And over time, like 10 years later, I was managing social media platforms for global tech companies and also their CEOs who like knew they needed to be on LinkedIn, didn't want to do it. And so I would write their social media posts, like create strategy, write their social media posts and share. But I think through that time, I guess like taking a large update, consolidating, getting it out, and amplifying in a way that people can that can get people's attention. Like through that, maybe applies. But I think there's just like such a passion because this is literally affects my children's life, and so I think it's like passion and like a little bit of skill built through being on the dark side. Yeah, I mean, when you talk about like parents don't know what's happening because the companies make it hard for us to understand all the functionality within their platform. They encourage things to disappear and make it hard for family. I mean, even Apple with like hidden folders. So kids can hide things from their parents. But and so that's where I saw a real need to break this down in ways that can be easily understood. And as I'm working on episodes for The Heat Is On, I mean, I got 8 to 10 pages for Snapchat of like lawsuit discovery and reporting, like test accounts and all of these things. And I'm like, okay, we got to weed through this in a way parents can understand. And it's a lot for even me who's experienced all these things in real time and now trying to organize it with clips that parents can not only understand, but then action on and give them like talking points to take to their friends and family about this and eventually like get their kids off of there, but then force the companies to be safer too. That's like the end goal through these public campaigns. But yeah, you're completely right that parents don't know what's happening. That's okay. We're never going to understand and be ahead of it. But our goal at The Heat Is On and Scrolling to Death is to help them be as up to date as possible.
And I think that that's a great segue into kind of one of the next things I wanted to discuss, which is some recent developments around teen accounts. Specifically, I was scrolling on Instagram and I saw Nick, you reposted the New York Times article, Instagram will limit its content for teenagers based now on PG-13 ratings.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, a major development. Essentially, just Meta is introducing movie style ratings to determine what younger users can see.
Yeah.
From your perspective as a parent and as an
Mm-hmm.
advocate,
Yeah.
does this feel like a meaningful step forward, or does it feel more like a PR gloss?
I mean, so as a wholly a PR gloss, but you saw that the Motion Picture Association like claimed no interest in this, like we did not approve this. Um, for me, it's really hard to stamp something as rated PG-13 that is consistently fluid and consistently new. Like a movie is static, beginning to end, it's always going to be the same. Okay, let's give it a rating. But something where not only is it user generated content with billions of posts going up every single day, but they're rolling out new functionality constantly. And Snapchat, or well, Meta has shown that they cannot and have not done a good job weeding out the bad content for teens. I mean, this has been shown in a new report by Arturo Bejar and a bunch of other groups, and then also teen survey, like asking teens themselves if they see this bad content, and they say yes. Like half of them have seen something inappropriate within the last 30 days or been contacted inappropriately. And so I think this is unfortunately a PR stunt, but like we don't know until we test it. And what we've learned is that we cannot trust what companies like Meta says. We have to test it. And they are also involving parents in this. So they're bringing together, I think it's like hundreds of thousands of parents to approve the ratings or actually like give feedback and be like, this is appropriate for a 13-year-old. I'm concerned about that because so far they said parents have reviewed millions of pieces of content and only found that 2% are considered inappropriate for kids above a PG-13 rating. And that doesn't align with what the reports are saying, what the teens are actually saying. So I'm curious for Meta to give us more insight and transparency into the parent review process. I want to hear from a parent that has been involved in that. But yeah, they say a lot, they do a little historically, and we will be, organizations in this space will be testing this PG-13 rating system once it rolls out.
So Emma, I'll put you on the spot. So Emma, you got invited as a +1 to the rollout of this product. So tell the story
You
of
did?
and ended up in
Emma,
a little bit of a conflict with Adam Massari that we have a clip of. But tell the story, it's important.
shut up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I joked that they did not know what +1 they were signing on to. So I got invited as a +1 to their launch event for the new teen feature. A very small group. It seemed to be largely parents and influencers, or kind of the intersection between the two. And we went into the room for the panel, and it was Adam Mosseri right there. And they opened it up for Q&As, and again, should not have invited me into the room. Raised my hand. And it is exactly what you had already said and stated, which is they touted over and over again. We listened to parents. We listened to parents. We brought together hundreds of parent working groups or whatever to be able to inform this decision. And I quite frankly just said, well, I understand that, and that's great to hear. However, the people who are the individuals who are using these features and interacting the most with them are young kids, and they need to be meaningfully included in the design of what you're trying to put out. So I said, how have you meaningfully included young people in the design of these features?
So hello, my name is Emma Lemke. I'm the Director of Gen Z Advocacy at the Sustainable Media Center. So a lot of the work I do is talking about how to empower young people online. So I'm very interested, you've discussed how you've listened to parents throughout this entire process. How have you also listened to Gen Z and kids while you're developing these features?
So we think that young people broadly, not just Gen Z, but even a little bit older as well, often serve as a bellwether for how the rest of us are going to spend our time online in the future. They're early adopters, they are trendsetters, culture and creators tend to gravitate to where they are. And so we've seen a lot of how we build Instagram what has grown on Instagram has been adopted by young people first. They were messaging way more than adults, long before adults did. They were using stories way more than adults, long before adults did. They were comfortable with reels and recommendations and the content from accounts that they didn't follow way before adults did. So a lot of how Instagram is built is responding to their needs, what they're enjoying, what they're not enjoying, etc. So a lot of how Instagram is designed is for young people broadly. But for the youngest people, for teens specifically, we want to make sure that we're being as responsible as we can, because they're the most important people to keep safe. And that's where we start to layer on parental concerns. So yes, we're going to make sure that we build a messaging service that works, because that's how teens connect, but we also need to build one that is safe. So we changed the rules for teens about who can message who, things like the nudity filter that I mentioned before, etc. But that layer is a layer of protections on top of the core product, which is really designed for how Gen Z and even up into the 20s use social media and the internet broadly.
Thank you. Great question. Okay, so we're going to go to the back row.
And it made me laugh because Steve, I sent it the video of me asking it and the response to Steve. And the first thing he sent back was complete dodge, no answer. And I think that's the playbook.
I need a copy of that. I need to see that video.
Very well media trained. But again, I think it was a question that could have warranted such an easy and fast response. But in reality, I was met with a dodge.
Mm-hmm.
But I would argue that the good news is the fact that they're speeding up their PR hits is code for the fact that Nicki, you and the parents that you work with are being effective, because they're trying to say, look, we're doing things.
Right. It happens
right?
every time a new report,
Yeah.
like Arturo Bejar's and Parents Together Heat Initiative, their report came out. And the same day, there was a press conference held by Meta, which we're hearing, we can't confirm, but we're hearing that it was supposed to be the next week and they moved it up to that day so they could try to, make, distract everybody. But yeah, it seems like we're playing a chess game where we're like, wait, we're proving to you you're not doing it right. And they're like, but we have this new initiative. Look, we're doing this great thing. And so it is, they're hearing us. And I'm so grateful, Emma, that you asked that question, looked them in the eye, like, because we want them to see us. Like, we want them to make changes. We're not trying to ruin their whole business. We just want them to actually fix it.
We had Arturo on the day of the announcement, and
Oh,
I
okay.
mean,
Yeah.
he's amazing because he's a parent and he's a developer. And
Yeah.
so when he calls bullshit on Facebook and says that's just not true, that code could be written, you're choosing not to solve the problem.
Hmm.
Like he knows how to write the code. And
Yeah.
he in fact presented it to Mark when he was there and said, "Here's the code that young women need to be protected." And Mark said,
Yeah.
"Well, tell me how much it's going to cost me in engagement." And the answer was,
Yeah.
Mark's not interested in giving up any of the shekels. So,
Yeah, I always
um,
think about David Erb. Have you heard of that whistleblower? He hasn't gone super public. He left Facebook like back in 2009, and it was when he realized that Facebook was recommending predators to children through the people you may know feature. So they were recommending like children in their area to literal predators, and it was leading, he was watching in the messenger like millions of kids be groomed. And he sat down at a table with the executive team and was like, we need to fix this. Here's how we fix this. And someone goes, the safety seat is just one seat at this table. There's a lot of seats at this table. And within weeks, you had Zuckerberg talking about encrypting messaging, therefore not even being able, so they did nothing, first of all, and then encrypted the messaging so you couldn't even see the grooming happening. Therefore, they're not liable for the grooming. And so that's when David Erb left the company, and I have a great interview with him. But I always think about that, like they're willing to just hide it rather than fix it.
which is just it's heartbreaking on so many
It's
levels.
children,
Yeah.
so here's a sensitive question. Um, Parents who are working with their teens and trying to solve this problem is a big, important community. And then there is, thankfully, a smaller, heartbreaking community that you and I and the three of us both know,
Hmm.
which are the parents who've lost children. And so Emma and I have gotten to know Brandy and Tony Roberts.
Yeah.
Uh, and, you know, how do you how do you talk to both parents who are trying to solve the problem for the kids and then also interact with parents who are public about their claims that these platforms have actually encouraged their children to hurt themselves or take their own lives?
Yeah, so I just never want to diminish, or I never want to make it seem like those deadly situations are outliers. And if, Arturo talks about the law of large numbers, meaning if at these big companies have billions of users, if you see something happening to just one person, you can just assume, and you have to check but you can assume that this is happening to hundreds, thousands, or even millions of other people, other children in this case. And so I think, and then you have John Haidt digging into this, talking about how this is an industrial scale of harm we're talking about. And so yes, these kids that have passed away because of something that happened on these platforms, we don't want to, it's hard to talk about, it's hard to hear about. We want to make it seem like that could never happen to us. And one goal of mine is to definitely introduce the kids, get to know the kids that have passed so that we can see our own children in them and understand that this could very well be something that happens to our children. If we're not careful. But also, a lot of these parents did a lot of the things they knew to do. They had all the parental controls, they had conversations they had a great relationship with them, and it could still go south from there. So just making those stories relatable and feel familiar to what you have going on in your family, I think is part of what I'm trying to do. But I have a lot of audience members who are have younger kids. And so they're at a point where they can start having these conversations. No one was talking to their kids about pornography at 6 years old, a decade ago or 5 years ago. we got to talk to our kids about pornography. We have a book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. We start talking to our kids about that at 5. We didn't used to talk to our kids about deadly drugs at 3. And now I tell my daughter, you know, if you only take medicine that was given to you by a parent and a doctor, remember, like constantly. And so there are new conversations that need to be had that are really important, even if your family has not been affected. And if you start early, not to discount all the people who have teenagers now, but if you start early, you can get your kids on board with the harms and understanding why we delay. And that's been like a big movement of parents who are like, okay, I'm glad I get it, but I want to help the kids that are on there now. And so it's like bring everyone together. Like we're all in this together. It's not like one and the other.
Is there any software, is there anything you've seen that you think changes the relationship between parents and kids in software? Is there any place that, has anyone shown you anything where you say, oh, if I had, you know, for a kid who is not yet ready to be on their own in social media or out on the web, this is a place where I could share a digital experience, or is that just not built yet or not built?
Like safe tech for my kids to use, to start
Yeah.
using when they, I mean, eventually they are, right? I'm going to have to teach them how to use tech. I'm going to be getting them either a landline at home. There's a company called Tin Can that has really cool retro landlines. I think it's really important to start teaching your kids how to communicate with each other, like not on a video call, not in text. So starting with like verbal communication, I think is important. Yeah, but at some point my kids are going to have to learn how to text their friends. That's like a skill to, you know, you have to teach them, and like there's a lot of learnings to be had there. So I will speak to what I will be doing. We'll be getting my kids probably a flip phone, or there's companies that create kid safe devices, Bark, Gab, Trumi, and Pinwheel. And, you know, there's a lot of functionality on there should you want to use it, if you want to track them. We can have a separate conversation about if that's good or bad. But if you want to get an update on like, oh, your kid might be experiencing bullying right now, it might be a good time to go talk to them. And here's a conversation starter. Like these companies do a great job helping parents guide their kids through these technologies, because we're not trying to keep them away from it forever. We're trying to guard this vulnerable time and protect them from like the deadly stuff. And set them up for success really into about their like brain development, like letting their brains wire in a healthy way so that they can move forward with a healthy relationship with technology one day. So I think it's about realizing like Apple device is not safe for kids. We will have multiple episodes on that at The Heat Is On. So choosing a child safe device or a flip phone or something really pared down, and then all about like delaying access to that as long as possible.
And a little bit, you know, more about design. I wanted to close out the discussion. We always have this open mic segment where we encourage you to get on your soapbox and to unveil your ideas for the future. And kind of this week, we wanted to ask you specifically, you know, if you could wave your magic advocacy wand, what is one design feature that you would add, or one feature you would make disappear? You have complete control over the digital ecosystem that we're currently in that you think would help parents in this digital world.
Gosh, ad is an interesting one. There's too many functionality. Oh God. I mean, I wish there was a way to truly get all of the younger kids off of these platforms. Like, do I think social media is safe for even 13-year-olds? No, but it's too easy for kids under 13 to sign up. And so whatever that looks like, whatever age assurance we can figure out that protects people's privacy, I wish we could protect the kids under 13 at a minimum. I think what I've been thinking about is I wish parents had more control over our children's experiences, meaning if I am going to let them on Snapchat, I don't want disappearing messages. I'll turn that off. I don't want the spotlight feed algorithm. Can I turn that off? I don't want Snapchat. I'm going to turn it off. And the kid cannot go back on any of that. So I think that could apply to like any platform. Like if I could customize it in a way that things that I feel are safe for them, and maybe add more functionality as we go. I would appreciate that as a parent, being able to customize their experience and be really involved in their interaction instead of being kept separate from what's happening on those platforms.
How do parents follow? What's the best way for parents to listen to you? How many different? What's your favorite place? If you could use one place where parents should go.
Right now, I would love if people will go to scrolling to death with the number 2/heat and sign up for our movement there. So add just their email, and we can start activating and building that community. And then other options, the Scrolling to Death podcast is available on all the major networks, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all those things. And if you are on Instagram, I am sharing some real-time stuff there, but I'm also getting active on 8, which is a safer, more responsible social media platform built by an incredible woman entrepreneur, Zoe Kalar. And I'm, hoping that next year will be like the great migration off of Instagram over to 8.
Very cool.
Thank you so much for jumping on with us. And Steve, thank you for joining the conversation too. Again, as a young person, I know how difficult it can be to grow up online, but I also can't imagine how difficult it is to parent online. So really appreciate all the work that you're doing to make it easier to have those intergenerational conversations between parents and children.
Yeah, and I we can't do this without young people. Like, parents can't be speaking for kids and young people. So we need to work hand in hand with like you and Ava and Lennon and all these amazing young people who like have a voice, and we literally grew up in this. So we can't do it without you guys. So thank you so much for taking a lead on this. And please send me that video at Meta the other day. Thank you. I need to see that so bad.
Well, I will definitely send you the video. It's really funny because Jules, the girl I was with, who's an influencer, we both raised our hands to make sure that we get the mic.
Yeah.
And then when they realized what they were doing, Adam's eyes got big because he saw her pull out the phone to record, and it made my day.
I'm just surprised they let you guys record at something like that without control. Like,
it was an influencer event, so like the first joke they made was like, "Oh, you're at an event with influencers," because everyone's phone went out when Adam got to the stage.
Right. Yeah.
And there was one question that was right before mine that actually stumped him and was awesome because 2 things. A parent was like, "Hey, Adam, can you point blank, can you please make it so that you'll stop sending my kid like I can't get a meme for my kid at 1 p.m. on a school day?" And he was like, "Oh, ha ha ha," and like he got nervous. And then the person right before me basically said like, "Well, I think that there are some features that are super harmful for kids that they still have access to, like could a kid create a close friend story?"
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Yes, they can." And the person who asked the question just went silent, and he went silent. And it was just eerie.
Yeah, I know we're trying to end, but I have to touch on that really quick. Arturo talked about how with the new teen account update, kids, you can turn off notifications at nighttime so they can get sleep. But if you want to limit notifications during the day, during school hours, to just get like 1 or 2 things, it takes 50 different toggles in order to be able to stop getting those push notifications during the day. So Adam got stumped because he knows they're trying to still get to kids during the day, and he's just pretending like he cares about them at nighttime, but not, he doesn't care during the day. So that's fascinating.
So let's talk about, before we run out of time, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
So where are we on the phones in schools movement? And like how much success have we had in the last year? Where does, Jonathan has been brilliant and relentless. Am I wrong to say it feels like the bell-to-bell phenomenon is actually settling in as a real thing?
I have some thoughts on this. 40 plus states have passed some kind of phone legislation, not all bell to bell, but their schools are really paying attention to kids and their use of phones. The problem is if it's not bell to bell, and if you're not locking them up or taking them at the front when they walk in, then kids are still going to be accessing them throughout the school day. It doesn't really get rid of the issues. But I've talked to some principals, and they say maybe 60% of kids will actually put their real phone in the Yonder pouch. Most of them have a dummy phone that they put in. And so they're still having an issue with this. I got sent a message this morning, actually, from a school, I think in Tennessee, where the principal said, if you have a phone out at school, I will destroy it. he literally will break it. And I don't know how he got away with this. I need to read the article, but it's still a problem. There's definite progress. For me, I am also worried about the school issued devices that the schools are giving our kids and the distractions and harms through those. That's a whole separate discussion that I cover over on my other organization, techsafelearning.org. But yeah, there's been progress with phones. There's still a long way to go, but I'm happy to see the progress there so far.
Well, thank you so much for jumping on. It was lovely to chat with you.
Thank you. We could probably keep
See
going,
you
but thank you
soon.
guys. See you soon.